Hello everyone and welcome back to My Opinion. And from trailing by 190 runs after India's first innings, England have pulled off a heist in Hyderabad, winning this game by 28 runs. A memorable victory for them and congratulations to them. A disappointing, embarrassing loss from an Indian perspective where I still can't believe they managed to lose the game from the position of strength that they were in after their first innings. And when I review this game, I'll be mentioning the key points in each innings, and I'll also be focusing on the aftermath, which is what I'm more concerned about. That you've had this kind of an aberration happen, but it's on how you respond to it, and they don't have to do too many things to respond to it. They're still the favourites to win the series, in my view, and the views of many others. However, the response that I've seen, or the response I've read from the relevant people involved, it doesn't fill me with great confidence that they'll be able to not that they won't be able to win the series, but the fact that they will be able to put in more convincing performances more often than not in the future. On the 11th of both sides starting off with India, they went with the same 11 that I said they'd go with in my previous video. And for England, there's a rumour floating around before the game started where they'd go with three frontline spinners, those spinners being Rehan Ahmed, Jack Leach and Tom Hartley, with Joe Root being the fourth spinner and Mark Wood playing as a sole seamer. I'd said in my previous video that I wouldn't have gone with that side. I thought it was the incorrect combination when playing in Hyderabad. I thought James Anderson and Ollie Robinson would be controlling seamers who wouldn't give away many runs and could exploit some reverse swing on offer. But neither of them played, and I thought that was playing in India's, or that would play in India's favour going into this game. And I think with what we saw with how the game panned out, even though England did win the game, I'd still say that India were offered a lot of chances to win this game, partly because of the deficiencies in the English attack. And Ben Stokes won the toss and chose to bat first. I'd said in my previous video that the first 3 days or so at this venue, the ball won't turn to a so-called exaggerated amount. And that's why I thought England, with Ben Stokes winning the toss and choosing to bat first, considering the way England have liked to play in recent times, and you thought that's how they approach things early on. They did do that in the first 2 days. I thought that would be the most likely scenario where we'd get a more competitive game than what it would have been if India had batted first. England's much talked about philosophy was on show in the early part of the game. And the reason why I thought they could get off to this kind of a start was because the Indian bowlers in both their bowling innings didn't hit their lengths as consistently as they would have liked, and this contributed to England being able to maintain a healthy rate of scoring across both their batting innings. They were 55 without loss and motoring along, and 3 ordinary dismissals meant that they squandered their position and went to 60 for 3. A recovery partnership then ensued, and they were 108 for 3 after the first session, and I thought they won that session. And at this point in time, they were still committing to their philosophy, keep that in mind. India won the second session, where England, after being 121 for 3, collapsed to 155 for 7. They'd squandered their start that they'd got, and it was all down to Ben Stokes, a returning Ben Stokes who played very well. I said in my preview that could you bank on him to perform consistently, especially in these conditions? Probably not. But he's got the capability to play match-defining innings, and you saw that kind of innings in his first innings. And unfortunately for India, it was a precursor of what was to come. Well, I even saw this in the first game in the South Africa series, defensive captaincy. You saw when Stokes and Tom Hartley were going in that mini partnership of 40-odd runs, I think 155 to 193, almost that amount. And already you saw quite a few fielders were on the boundary. And even before Ben Stokes dismissed the last wicket to fall, I think when Bumrah was bowling, almost everyone was on the boundary. So it was a precursor of what was to come. And I didn't think 246 was going to be enough in the first innings. However, going into the game, a lot of fans would have taken 246, and England was 60 for 3 as well after squandering a start of 55 without loss. So even though it wasn't enough, I think the English fans would have been hopeful they could have made something out of this. This wasn't the best game for the Indian bowling attack, especially bowling in a home test where someone like Ravindra Jadeja going at 5 and over across 18 overs in a home test is unheard of. And on the fast bowling selection, you'd have heard me saying in the previous video that I didn't feel Jasit Umrah needed to play a single home test throughout his career. And this is because you've got so many seamers in India who can bowl in these conditions and wouldn't do too much bowling when you've got these quality spinners. This would be a great way to manage Bumrah's workload while being able to win at home. And on Mohammad Siraj, I'd said on this surface, where there's not too much pace, you would have heard what I said about the England side, where Robinson and Anderson should have played as two controlling seamers to be able to get that reverse swing. And on Siraj, is he that controlling seamer? And especially on a surface that doesn't have too much pace in it? No, he's not. He bowled 4 overs, went for 28 runs. And they had no choice but to play him because you've got Mukesh Kumar and Avesh Khan on the bench who wouldn't go on the surface. So the squad they selected, they didn't give the options for them to use in terms of the seam bowlers, and that's why they had to play both those two. Bumrah playing, even though I don't think he needs to manage his workload. He played and did well in this test, but Siraj, he shouldn't have played in terms of there are a lot of seamers in India who would have done a better job on this service in my view, but the squad they selected meant that he had to. Even though all this took place and it was a scrappy start from India, I thought they were well in the driving seat by the end of day one, where they were 119 for 1. And before their first innings started, I looked at this England attack and I thought, who was going to dismiss Yashasvi Jaiswal, who I thought was going to have a fantastic series? He scored a brilliant 80 in the first innings at above a run a ball. Rehan Ahmed, the inexperienced Tom Hartley, you saw how he went in the first innings, especially in his first 3 overs. Jack Leach was bowled cautiously in both innings, only bowled 10 overs in the second innings. And Mark Wood, his effect was completely nullified by the nature of the surface. So who was going to dismiss Yashasvi Jaiswal? And unfortunately for India, and again, this formed a convenient excuse for the management to justify them losing this game. And this was not an excuse. But they led by 190 runs after the first innings, and most of the players gave their wickets away. I mean, Yashasvi Jaiswal trying to go for a boundary, the others trying to go for sixes. And that was the only way England were going to get a wicket, because they selected the completely wrong attack for these conditions. I didn't think Tom Hartley should start, even though he got the wickets that he did in the second innings. And it was only going to take India gifting their wickets to give England a glimmer of hope. Not that they had much of a chance. I thought it was 190 runs is a mammoth lead, especially, or a mammoth amount to trail by, especially in Indian conditions, and if you're a touring side. So I thought India had done enough to win the game, more than enough to win the game. But England did have a glimmer of hope because they were being gifted wickets. And a bit of a sorry bowling card, where apart from Joe Root, who got 4 for 79 in 29 overs, their best bowler in this innings, no one else was really too effective. Where Jack Leach, as we thought he would, he contained the runs, but he isn't going to be that attacking bowler. Rehan Ahmed, inexperienced, and Mark Wood tried his best, but the surface completely nullified his effect. I'd said to keep something in mind a couple of segments ago. I'll be bringing that up now. England were 113 for 1 and 18.4 overs, trying to take the game on and were scoring at above 5 runs per over. They went from there to 117 for 3, and things slowed down from there with 140 for 4 and 27 overs, and then Ben Stokes was dismissed at 163 for 5, where he scored 6 or 33 deliveries. Now, after the third wicket fell, and this is the point that's misunderstood, where England didn't get themselves in a position to look to win the game because of so-called baseball. They got themselves into that position because they realized that trying to go gung-ho at everything wasn't going to work, especially from that point in time. They had to change the way they were looking to go about things. And they were still busy at the crease. You saw Ollie Pope, where a fantastic innings, yes, a mammoth innings. Out of 196 runs, he scored 21 boundaries, so 84 runs out of 196 in boundaries. So he rotated strike the majority of the time, was busy at the crease, and a combination of Ben Foakes, Rehan Ahmed, and Tom Hartley exhibited that as well. And what played into their hands was intelligently, I thought, that England played things, especially realizing that their philosophy wasn't going to work. The defensive tactics from India played into their hands, and that's why they didn't really have to do too much to get the runs they got. They were sweeping, then the fielders went out on the boundary, no matter who it was. The moment someone hit a boundary, there were a few boundary fielders placed, and it made it easier for a partnership team. But I'm not taking any credit away from England, because coming back from a situation where you're trailing by 190 runs in this part of the world is a huge thing. But the tactics from India were baffling, and we saw that happen in South Africa in the first test. We saw a precursor of this in the first innings of this game, and it was a case where it's been called as reactive captaincy. It didn't even seem like it was reactive, because it was just the same. Whenever they hit a few boundaries or looking to go for a few sweeps, the boundary fielders were placed, and that meant that they could keep on looking to get singles. The partnership grew, and early on in day 4, heads started dropping, and even that was completely unnecessary. One, going defensive when the opposition is trailing by 27 with half the side down was ludicrous. Secondly, your heads are drooping when looking to chase 230 runs against a spin attack, where the only reason why you lost your wickets was because you gifted them in the first innings and still managed to lead by 190 runs. And your heads are drooping when you've got all this talent, and I just don't understand that at all. India started to lose this game in the early part of the 4th day, when heads started to droop for no reason. And during the bowling innings, yes, the bowlers, like I said, throughout this test match didn't hit their lengths as consistently as they would like. But the defensive captaincy played into England's hands. And because India had spent such a long period of time not actively engaging in the game the whole of day 3 and the early part of day 4, the only time they woke up after their long slumber was, I think, early on after the tea session on the 4th day, where KL Rahul's wicket was lost. I think India won 90-something, 100-something for 4. And it's a case where, did they crumble because England put pressure on them? No. They crumbled because they were drowsy from sleepwalking for so long. The moment they woke up and the 4th wicket fell, they got frazzled, and they didn't need to get flustered at all, because you're looking at the dismissals once again. You're looking at someone like Tom Hartley. Yes, 7 wickets, a great performance after going for that many runs in the first innings, especially and bowling on debut. However, how many of the deliveries they bowled would have hit the stumps, apart from, for example, when he bowled to KS Bharat later on in the piece? Not too many. So, India were flustered because they woke up after not thinking actively for a considerable period of time, and they shot themselves in the foot. And despite all that, despite all the sleepwalking, they should have still won this game, and they somehow managed to throw it away. So, I'm not taking any credit away from England, but it was almost impossible for India to lose this game, and it shows how negative the captaincy had to be in England's second batting innings, that belief was even created in the opposition camp. 230 was, in my view, never going to be enough. And unfortunately, when India did wake up, they got flustered, and an embarrassing loss for them. On understanding the events that took place during this game, the most laughable thing I've heard in a long while while hearing commentary during a game was Kevin Peterson, just before the Indian collapse started during the second innings. He posed the question that just because England scored 400 in the second innings, or their second innings, that could you win a test series in India by playing traditional cricket or conventional cricket? And he posed this laughable question while sitting next to a legend of Indian cricket who has been an opening for India in the 1970s when they didn't used to wear helmets. And it was an incredible exhibition of recency bias, but even then I couldn't believe someone would even think of asking that. And this was in the same test match when Harsha Bhogle posed a very valid argument. Peterson then responds with, "That's absolute rubbish," only then to say something that, I didn't even know what to say to that. So I had to get that off my chest. But it highlights the lack of understanding as to what went on in this game. And this can also be seen or derived from the comments made by the management. On the captain himself, the first thing he says, I can't quite put my finger on why we lost. I mean, 1.4 billion people, and those are just the people living in India, and others as well can put their finger on it, but you can't. I don't know what to say to that. And a statement where you could mistake this for being written as a comment under a post. So something that maybe a bot would write, a generic line. And what it read was, we need to counteract Bazball. It's very important that we respond and we need to develop some strategies. A laughable statement, but what was Bazball in this game? Was it a side picking the wrong attack for the conditions? Was it them being bowled out for an underpass score? Was it them conceding a 190-run lead while you gifted your wickets to them? Was it them losing half their side before they got within 20 runs of levelling out that lead? And was it them bowling you out with the same attack by bowling okay, but not too much? They were bowling with one frontline spinner who was a debutant, a frontline spinner who was used very cautiously, only bowled 10 overs in the last innings, an inexperienced a player playing his first test match in India, and a Mark Wood who was completely ineffective on the surface. Was that Bazball? And do you have to counter-attack, or rather, do you have to make strategies to counter-attack that in your own backyard where you've lost before this game 3 tests in the last 46 tests? It's a joke of a statement to make. And on India's supposed approach of what they did and they didn't do when they were batting, this whole argument they should have taken the game on a bit. Even if the England bowlers had bowled 100 dot balls in a row, they weren't going to get the Indian batsmen out unless they made a mistake. India got flustered because they only woke up when the 4th wicket fell in the second innings. They were too drowsy to really get their head in a rational state, and that's why they crumbled. And even then they should have won the game. So as much as this would be a memorable win for England, it's an embarrassing loss for India. And the backlash as to people who still think India won the series, and I do think that as well, I won't be surprised if it is a 4-1 victory. However, people don't think England can get a second win because of comparing the squads. India have got a far superior squad and are probably the best home team to play in the sport. But the reason why this conversation has arose now is because you're looking at the defensive captaincy, which has allowed a team that had almost no chance of coming back into the game, less than no realistic chance of coming back into the game, and they've won a game by 28 runs. So if you can lose a game from that position, who knows where this defensive captaincy can lead. So an embarrassing loss for India. I think the KL Rahul and Jadeja have been ruled out of the second test, and Sarfraz Khan and Saurabh Kumar, these 3 players have been drafted in the squad for the second test. I'll be previewing that game shortly. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends. Remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?